So here we're going to talk about determinants and just kind of the basics of what they are. So the main idea is we want to be able to associate a number to every single square matrix. And we'll start with the 2 by 2 case. And we've actually already considered it. So if we have this matrix, A, B, C, D, then the determinant is found by AD minus BC. So this was found when we were calculating the inverse. Another way to denote the determinant are vertical bars rather than the normal matrix. So here's an example. AD minus B says 3 times 7 minus -4 times 2. So this is 21 plus 8. So the determinant here is 29. And it's very important to watch your signs. That's usually the biggest mistake, especially with problems like this where that center negative sign becomes a positive. Before we can talk about determinants of larger matrices, we have to talk about the minor and the cofactor. So if A is a square matrix, the submatrix found by deleting row I and column J is known as the IJ minor, and it's denoted by A sub IJ. The cofactor is found by C sub IJ, which is equal to -1 raised to the I plus j times the determinant of ij. So this sign, this -1 to the I plus j, is really just a sign. And some of these are going to be positive and some of these are going to be negative. So the easy way to remember it is the very first entry in the first row, first column will be positive. After that, we're going to do a checkerboard pattern to determine the rest. We just kind of checker out positives and negatives. And this will determine the sign in your cofactor. So here I want to find A23 and A31. So A23 comes from deleting the second row in the third column. That leaves me with the matrix 3 minus 6, 8, 5. If I want to find the cofactor, I first notice that the second row, third column in my checkerboard pattern is a minus. So this is negative determinant of this matrix. 3 times 5 is 15. Minus -6 times 8 is -48, so plus 48. So this gives me -63. To find A31, we delete the third row in the first column. So this leaves me with -6, 1, 2, 7. To find C sub 31, we first notice that in the checkerboard pattern it's positive, so it's just going to be this determinant. -6 times 7 is -42, minus 1 times 2 is 2. So this one is -44. So now to actually calculate the determinant of a matrix. So we do this by what's called cofactor expansion of either a row or a column. So the first step is to actually choose the row or column. And it's not going to matter, any row or any column. So if we choose a row, the determinant of A is found by A sub I1 C sub I1 plus A sub I2 C sub I2 all the way up to A sub IN C sub IN. If we go down the column, A sub 1j C sub 1j plus A sub 2j C sub 2j all the way up to A sub nj C sub nj. So this is just a very formal way of explaining something that's actually fairly easy. So once we pick a row or a column, we'll write down the first entry in that row or column times the cofactor. We'll then write down the next entry in the row or column times the cofactor, the next entry times the cofactor, and so on and so on. So here's an example. The first step is to pick a row or a column to expand down. Anytime you see zeros, I suggest you pick that row or column. So here we should pick either the first row or the second column. I'm going to go ahead and do the first row. So I write down a 2, and then I take the cofactor. This is in a plus sign in our checkerboard pattern, so it's just times the determinant of deleting the first row and first column. I'm left with 2, 1, 1, 2. The next entry is a 0, and that's just going to end up being a 0 in my addition, so we tend to just ignore it. And this is why picking this row is very nice, because it just gives us a little less work. The -3 is also in a positive spot in the checkerboard, so I have plus -3, deleting that row and column. I'm left with 4, 2, -3, 1. We now just take the determinants of the 2 by 2. 2 times 2 is 4, minus 1 times 1 is 1. 4 times 1 is 4, minus -6. So this is now 2 times 3, minus 3 times 10. So 6 minus 30. So our determinant here, minus 24. So here's another example. This one's slightly harder because we don't have any zeros. So we should pick any row or any column. I'm going to go ahead and pick the first column. Since I did a row on the last example, I'll do a column on this one. So I look at the first entry, which is a 1. This is in a positive spot in our checkerboard. And then I delete that row and column. I'm left with 5, 2, 1, 1. The next entry is a 3. This is in a negative spot in our checkerboard, so -3. Deleting the first column in the second row, I'm left with -2, -3, 1, 1. So I have plus -4. Deleting the third row in the first column leaves me with -2, -3, 5, 2. Now taking my determinants, I have 1 times 5 minus 2, minus 3 times -2 plus 3, minus 4 times -4 plus 15. So this is 3, minus 3, and then minus 4 times 11. So -44 is this determinant.